Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Let Loose podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge in the Pokemon TCG. Today, I'm joined by a super awesome co-host yet again for the second time, Lee. Lee, what's up, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Dude, so excited to have you back on. Today, we get to talk some super awesome stuff. We're back to, we finished all the videos about the different types, and we're going to be doing a staples episode next week. And before we get to the staples episode, I think it's kind of important to talk about maybe some like cards that people should be playing, just to kind of take a break from some of the other stuff and have a little bit of fun here. So, underplayed cards, I don't know. What's there to talk about underplayed cards except the cards themselves? Do you feel like in GLC there's like a card pool that's untouched that hasn't been played yet? There's like a perfect combination that we just need to find. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been kind of experimenting with that exact kind of thing. I've really liked Mallow and Cypher Maniac, the combo, like stacking any two cards on top, and then within an item build to just like draw into it similarly to, or arguably more power than like Mag Cargo. Acting as a function to get the card that you need in your hand, like instantly spotting it. Um, I've been experimenting with that and manipulating the top of the deck. I think that's pretty underexplored. Like cards like Ether, Max Elixir, Accelerating Energies. That's the type of time I've been on lately.
Yeah, and all those cards are kind of found their place in your Drago Step deck, so that's super awesome. Again, that there's like two or three videos of you up playing it on YouTube, so go check it out, and also on your Twitch channel, that Drago Step list. But like no matter how many times I've sat here and looked through the card pool that is, all the cards that we can play in Gym Leader Challenge, X, Y, and onward. Like I'm always surprised by new combinations when I'm digging through deck list. Or just like kind of like perusing on the Cardboard Warriors or PokemonCard.io website, just kind of looking for that new piece of tech that I'm like, this is it. This is the card that's going to fix it. And we're so fortunate that people in the community are always posting about cool new cards they find or like sweet plays that they've done. And so, some of the cards we're going to talk about today, didn't come from you and me. Of course, there are cards on this list that we thought of as like, these are the cards we want. But of course, I had to ask the All About That Base Discord for some help. So huge shout out to everyone at the All About That Base Discord community for helping us out and make this list. I think it's super sweet. I think we got some spicy ones, but some ones that like should definitely see more play. Let's hop into it. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, hey, the first card, this is mine. This is like one of my favorite cards, and I hate that it doesn't see as much play as some other options. So the card is Sonia here. And Sonia is search your deck for up to two basics or two energy. So you get two or two. And I just think this card is so cool and so neat. And there are other cards like setup cards that are potentially better. Like you look at Bridget that gets three, basically the same card in Gloria that gets three, and those cards are often preferred to this. Even cards like Clavel, obviously Ball Guy is always going to have its place as a key, setup supporter. But man, Sonia, just like being able to use it to set up early and then being able to go grab two energy late, especially if you're playing like a psychic or a dragon build where like having certain energy to hand or being able to get that energy to use with your Zatu is so important. I just love the flexibility of this card. Lee, what are your thoughts on Sonia?
Yeah, that was on my list. The ore cards in general. I like having the flexibility. Early game, later in the game. It's never really dead per se. There's lots of scenarios that come up throughout a game. You can use those both the ore um, effectively.
Mhm.
Yeah, like Peyton Liza is another one that I have. Like, if you're playing Cynthia, what's one less but with you know, the opportunity to be able to switch. Like that's a very, very strong effect. Um, and for one less card, I mean, just like Sonia, you never know exactly when it could come into effect. But if you build your deck around cards that there's lots of decks that love to switch. That probably play something like a Cynthia, and that would be a flexible card to try out there if you wanted to try some new stuff.
Yeah, and I think the key word you use there is flexible. Like Gym Leader Challenge is a singleton format. Like you can get around that by playing multiple copies that do similar things. Sure, Cynthia's Shuffle Draw 6, but you kind of want more of those effects in your deck. And if you can get the flexibility of a modal card like Tate and Liza here, that's great. Now another one you sent me too that's up on the screen is Giovanni's Scheme, which is a card that like I've seen it in decks here and there, but like it never finds its way into like meta list potentially. But it's a really cool and flexible card. Again, kind of the same modal effect that Tate and Liza hears. Draw until you have five, which is a way worse effect than shuffle draw five, if we're going to talk about it. But you do get the added luxury of like you get muscle band on a supporter here. So if you're missing KOs, Giovanni's scheme is not only helping you maybe potentially draw cards in a certain spot, but also getting that 20 extra damage boost is a card that a lot of decks probably want, to be honest. I think 20 extra, 30 extra damage is something that we're going to need going forward, especially if tanky decks ever find themselves kind of king of the meta.
Absolutely.
Well, moving on, here's some more cards that I added to the list here. I think we should probably be running more than one tool removal suite in GLC, at least at the moment. And I feel like maybe there's a little bit of recency bias coming in from my viewpoint. I've been playing it a lot against Weeder, and if you guys saw, I dropped a video today of him playing Leviathan, where he just is just crushing me with a Whale Lord that has a luxurious cape after I removed it one time with Field Blower. So remember, that's in the back of my head while I'm making this list. But Field Blower, again, is the best of them. You know, play it, you can remove two items, no, so tools or stadiums in any way. Um, that's great, but sometimes you want more. So we've got great utility in these cards. Lost Vacuum, you have to lost zone a card, but you get to lost zone their tool or their stadium. Tool Scrapper gets two tools. It's just Field Blower, but a little bit more limited. And then Faba, which is a supporter, you know, you do have the added luxury of lost zoning the tool, the stadium, or a special energy, which has a lot of application. But the real issue is, you know, it's a supporter. Do you want that effect on your supporter for turn? I think some decks do.
Yeah, Alba's an interesting one. That's definitely an interesting one. Um, Lost Vacuum is definitely a sneaky good one, especially with stuff like you said, Luxurious Cape. I'm a big fan of that. I've been preaching Lost City, Lost Vacuum, stuff like that for a while now. Just permanently get rid of something, maybe you catch them off guard too. They're not. A lot of players aren't really expecting the double tool removal either, so maybe they. I don't know. It's hard to say, but all three of those are definitely considerations now and moving forward,
Yeah.
especially with the I'm with you with the recency stuff. I'm about ready to put a lost vacuum in a couple of my things.
Well, I mean, you've been throwing down, you know, a luxurious cape on a Raikou, which is one of the scariest things to have a luxurious
Yeah.
cape on. So,
Yeah, I'm preaching all this lost city and lost vacuum stuff, but I'm hitting the crosshairs, but exactly like I'm speaking, not only from experience, but like, I'm on the Discord too. That'd be effective against a lot of people, me included.
mhm. One of our listeners wants to remind you guys that also Startling Megaphone is another tool removal card that you can play. Definitely worth it in some of these spots. Again, these three are the ones that I'm considering, but Startling Megaphone is also great in its own right. I can't remember the actual text, but it's definitely up there with the other tool removals. Here's one that again I added to the list here, and I actually like it in a lot of lists, especially with the amount of draw up to effects that we have in Gym Leader Challenge. You know, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking things like Reggie Drago. You have Octillery, Barrel, all these cards that draw up to, and sometimes you want to be discarding cards. So Red's Challenge is a card I think more of us, especially if you're playing one of those Pokemon that sits on your bench and is drawing you cards up to. Red's Challenge is a card I think we should be considering more and more. So it's just discard two cards from your hand and go get a card from your deck. It's Ultra Ball, which we already play, which of course is an item card, but it goes and gets you any card. So this is effectively half a teammate's that makes you discard, but like you can get any card at any point in the game. There's no condition of a KO. Just like think about it, Lee. You need double dragon energy. All right.
No, I was playing that card, and that's it's funny you say that, especially with the Reggie Drago. You nailed it right there. decks that can draw forward, discarding two, you might have some synergy in your discard pile or whatever, and to pinpoint that one card, especially maybe after, in my case, if I goose hollowed and didn't grab the DDE because I wanted to Evo TM, Red's Challenge is the perfect card to follow up with the next turn into Sonic Slip.
Yeah, and then like colorless energy. Sometimes your Snorlax deck, which is running Barrel plus Squovit Nest Stash, some other draw engines of some sort. Like this card just goes and gets you that energy that you need, or it can get you a Turbo Energy or Energize if you missed on Arvin or Goose Hala. Like Red's Challenge is
Mhm.
probably a card that we should see in more decks. It's obviously limited. Discarding two cards is a cost that can be steep, but like I think there are decks that can afford to play it. And I'm surprised that I haven't seen it more often. I'm about to shove it into my Torterra Beautifly deck to make sure I can go and get like a luxurious cape if I need to, or an energy. Just like whatever card. It's a Rosa raid that has an
Yeah,
ultra
I was
ball
about to
text.
say, I don't like that.
Well, Lee, this was one of the cards that you put on the list, and I'm a little bit of in disagreement. But I'm going to let you talk about it first before I dissent. But the card is Pokemon Communication, and I've tried playing this card
Mhm.
a lot, and it has some pretty cool text here. So it's reveal a Pokemon from your hand, and you get to switch it for any Pokemon in your deck, and it's an item card. Um, Ball Guy has existed as all the different item search ball cards have existed. So if you're looking for kind of like a way to point where Pokemon search is good, it's always good. But Pokemon communication, what applications, how are you using this in some of your decks?
I think if you have like 15 and up Pokemon, it's probably a safe bet, especially if you have like two stage two lines and then maybe like, I don't know, at least one or two other, but that's usually most decks support Pokemon with it. Um, I think it's a really safe bet for decks like Water, um, Dragon. Well, decks that play Evo TM2, it has weird applications and like nuances where you want to Evo TM or maybe even Water with Palafin. You have Palafin in your hand, then you can't value an evolution into your free retreater, or you got your evolution in hand, so you can't hit the Evo TM. Or you just find throughout the course of a game whatever Pokemon you need into your turn.
Yeah,
I think that's my argument. I don't know. It's not like it doesn't go in every deck, but I think it could see a little bit more play,
yeah.
especially with like the strategy, a couple of new strategies over the last few sets.
Mhm. And it used to see a lot of play, like, thinking back to like one of the best decks, especially at the time during the format, Archeops was huge, and you wanted to use your stadium to get your Arcan into play. Well, okay, if Arcan is in your hand, you can't get onto the bench, and then you can't get your turn to Archeops if that's the case. So using Pokemon communication to kind of slot it back into your deck so you could then do that is great. TM Evo,
Mm,
like you said, is great. Someone
Maybe
either
even in Grand too, if like you can't hit your jump left play, or maybe it could. There's a couple different niche things I'm sure I'm missing too, but
yeah.
it's a good card.
Yeah, I think it's a great card. It's a fine card. My issue with it has always been just like you have to have two cards for it to work, and one of them has to be a specific Pokemon. So I've always find cards like this that have to pair with some other specific card just don't necessarily work for me in certain situations, and I find myself frustrated with Pokemon communication at time. It's a good card. Obviously, I'm thinking of the moments where it doesn't work and how memory works. We all know that we remember the bad over the good. I'm sure there's been some stupid Pokemon communication plays I've made over the course of my GLC experience, but just remember the bad times. I'm like, I would just rather have like, any other ball search card at that point, or evolution instance, or Evo Soda. But again, like you mentioned, there are some applications where Pokecom is way better. Grass is probably a deck, like you mentioned, with the jump pluff and some other things where it's just looking at it being like, that's great. You have another basic in your hand, but you need to get Groddle. Just swap it in your deck. So, Pokemon communication, should we be playing it? Yeah, you guys should. I'm not going to, but you all should be playing it.
Yeah, for sure. You got shit.
Another card that I think is super cool is Ace Trainer. Ace Trainer is you can play this card if you're behind on prizes. Basically, you have to have more prize cards left than your opponent. And for you, it becomes a Cynthia. So you get to shuffle, draw six. but for your opponent, it becomes draw three. And so I think there are decks out there that are going to fall behind. I'm thinking like spread decks, for example. They always like to play for behind. There's probably some control strategies out there that want to build these big hands. Well, what if you could build a hand while you disrupted your opponent? So Cynthia is obviously the card that you look at. It's shuffle draw six. Well, this is like a combo of like you get to draw that six. At the same time, it's like Marnie, but one less for your opponent, but one more for you. So I don't know. I feel like Ace Trainer is a card that more of us should play. Obviously, a conditional draw supporter can be rough at times, but I mean, there are decks that can always pull this off.
Yeah, don't let Weeder see that with the Leviathan. He plays Surge and Delinquent, right?
Hmm.
Oh yeah, don't let him see that card.
Yeah, this is kind of, with shock lock. A lot of people are talking about shock lock cards. Like, you get to like, basically remove everything in your opponent's hands with Xeroxis, right? Well, imagine you like call Signal Magneton, go and
Mhm,
get Surge, Ace Trainer, and Delinquent. Well, you don't even have to play the Xeroxes. You just make them shuffle their hand, draw up to three, and then get rid of their hand. This could be like a backup plan in case it's prize. Like, I know we're all kind of worried about that card coming out in the future. This could potentially already exist and we haven't seen it.
for sure. Yeah, you nailed it right there. The call signal, I have it in my list.
No, yeah, but don't play it against me, please. It sounds brutal.
For
All right, a tool here that I think maybe more people should be playing, and I think you agree with me here on this too. Tool Jammer.
sure.
Tool Jammer states as long as this Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active, tools have no effect. And one of the reasons why this card would be pretty useful in the meta, at least at the moment, is that everyone's using TMs. And there's no way to really stop a TM because it gets used and then it gets discarded. So there's like no like field blower, there's no other tech really that you can do to get around it. So Tool Jammer is kind of like your only real spot. What applications are you seeing for Tool Jammer in the decks that you're playing?
I had Tool Jammer for a long time in Dragon, along with the Gumi, to just trying to be as disruptive as I can. But Tool Jammer is really good. If you see a Luxcape Mon and they're just trying to get, you could hit their base HP, but they're trying to get over the hump. You could, surprise them with the Tool Jammer there, or maybe even bait them into, you hit them for over their base HP. You can leave the Luxcape there and save a saucier play for later. Um, I've done that before. Like, I know it's the same amount of prizes, but like to take another Pokemon potentially, and still have your supporter play. Maybe they don't expect it or something. You can do some cool stuff with Tool Jammer, and like you said, stopping TMs. Um, don't play it against me, but yeah, Tool Jammer is fantastic. Um, Even in like control builds, I know Ghouls was messing with Tool Jammer. He had Galar Mind. Um, Counter catchered my Tapu Koko, and I had I, I had zero retreat with a air balloon Tapu Koko with Galar Mind. It was like I was just like, this is crazy? Yeah, it's a really good card in very very many situations. Actually, it's the more I think about it, the more I like Bull Jammer.
Yeah. And I actually, we spoiled some cards last week. I don't want to say spoiled. We reviewed the set for Twilight Masquerade, and there's that Farfetch that when you play it from hand, you get to go and grab any tool and attach it to it. I just feel like that Farfetch and this Tool Jammer like might find its way into some wonky colorless control list that's doing kind of the same thing you mentioned. You've got Galar Mine, you're counter catching things up, and you just got this Farfetch sitting in the active spot with a Tool Jammer stopping you from doing whatever you're trying to do. So and it's got some applications. It might be cool. I don't know. We'll try it out. It's a
It's for
card.
the user board too. If you take a knockout with the mon that it's attached to.
Mm, yeah, getting rid of YouTube board. That's a really cool
Yeah.
application.
Hmm.
Well, coin flips. I know you're all about them. The coin flips and I have not been so kind. I got double timer ball the other day, and I said I've never had this feeling before. Like I never realized you could get two Pokemon with timer ball. So that's where my brain is at when I see Silene at times. But Silene is a very useful card, and I play it in a lot of decks. It's flip two coins, and you get to put for the number of heads you get. cards from your discard pile on top of your deck. And this is great because you can't really recur items or special energy in a very like efficient way. Obviously, you do have to get a little bit lucky with the coin flips, but you can put them on top of your deck, and then maybe you have access to them from there. Silene, what are you doing with Silene, Lee?
Phew, I'm doing a lot of stuff with Silene. What ain't I doing with Silene? I'm putting energy back to max elixir ether. I'm putting my luxurious cape back. I'm putting my double dragon energy back. Um, yeah, I think earlier, just in my game against Castella, I Silene for one, put energized back, electrode for one, and energized again. There, it's just a good card, a good reactive card. You can abuse a good card early. You can find a card that you lost late. Um, with a lot of the other stuff that I'm promoting, like the drawing items and stuff, and that I'm playing, it works really well. I've had a lot of fun playing with Eileen, and like you said, like just flipping coins. I'm the guy that plays Extranceiver over Pokegear most of the time, so I don't know. Just it's a different kind of thrill.
Mhm. Yeah, and Silene's great. Silene already sees play in like almost every single control build because you miss on flipping a coin. It's not that big of a deal, but like getting special energy back, getting one of those key items back, max potion to heal something that you need to kind of stick in the active and just kind of stall out. Getting a useful supporter back. And then there's so many ways to draw into those top cards. Like just thinking about Dragon, for example. You can fast call for Silene, put double Dragon energy back on top of your deck, and then the new Dracloak can just look at the top two, put that double dragon into your hand, and then the other card on bottom. So you can get that, dragon energy back almost immediately. Same thing with Reggie Drago, draw up into it. The barrel can do it. We talked about Octillery and Water being able to do these things. So Silene is probably underplayed. I think the turnoff here for most people is the coin flips. They're probably like me. They've got a little bit of like, yeah, they've been burned by timer ball too many times. Can we trust? Can we trust the die to get us heads? I don't know. I like to put things into my own hands, but getting back that double colorless energy would definitely be nice. So Silene, we should probably be playing it more, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh yeah,
This is a card that we talk about all the time. We're like, we should play this card more. And we never do, Lee. I don't know what it is. We don't listen. We never do. And then we just
yeah.
complain about some of the decks that are running wild while, we could just be
Yeah,
playing this card.
myself included. I've been, like I said, I've been talking about this card and telling everybody to play it for months, but I think I only play it in like literally one deck. I always am like, I should make room in this, but I think it's time. I think it's time to start playing that.
Yeah.
Not in my Raikou list, and please don't play that against my Raikou. Yeah. Other than that, I think we can. I think the more aggressive decks can definitely get away with that. Dragon comes to mind.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, let's talk about the card first because the card is Lost City. And
yes.
Lost City is whenever a Pokemon, either yours or your opponent's, is knocked out, you just put it into the Lost Zone. And recovering Pokemon is basically a key in every single deck. It's not just basics. Evolution Pokemon can be recurred, sometimes not easily, but it's definitely possible to do these things. And then you look at a couple decks that like their whole core strategy revolves around like 3 or 4 Pokemon, some of them basics, and they need to like work in unison. I have Sableye up here on the screen. Like, what can a Psychic Lost Zone deck do to you if Sableye is in the Lost Zone? And the answer is like absolutely nothing. Like, they cannot win the game if you literally get rid of this. Can Hitmonbros win the game if you get rid of Hitmontop? Maybe, but it's going to be a lot harder. So, like, getting rid of some of these, someone mentioned it the other day, gimmicky decks. And again, gimmicky, but they're strong, but they're definitely like all in on a certain thing. Lost City is busted. It's kind of the fun police when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Games are won and lost with Lost City. Well-timed Lost City will win a game against certain decks. Like you said, Sableye, what are they going to do? They're going to sit there and Tulip and Mimikyu copy what you're doing probably the entire time. That's if we're being realistic. Yeah, and then like you said, Bros, maybe with Okie Dokie now and working that into the mix, but maybe still though. That's still a really good card against them, especially if they're committed into their bro play. They haven't like set everything up yet. Catch somebody really off guard with Lost City. I've been cooked by it. Oh yeah, I'll just escape, bro. I'll sacrifice this guy. Nope, Lost City. See ya.
Yeah. And like, we're gonna talk about the video again. Just posted a video of Weeder going like, he drew Lost City off the top, played Lost City, used Intellion to go get Field Blower and the energy or something else that he needed to put up Whale Lord, throw down Lost City, knock out my Torterra, and I'm just standing at this like unkillable Whale Lord, and I'm just like, I scoop. Like that Lost City lost me the game.
Yeah, you knock out my Raikou, same thing. I'm good. I'm not gonna Thornton into my Emolga. I'm not.
Mhm. But yeah, Lost City, like it's a good tech card. I think if we're going to talk about maybe one of the reasons why it is underplayed is number one, it's not the most fun card in a singleton format, especially when like you can have a lot of redundancy in your trainer suite. Having redundancy in your Pokemon is a little bit more difficult just because of the way that they're printed. So you get rid of my Groddle. Yeah, I have maybe one other search option in Grass, but it's still going to be hard to replace Torterra at some point, which is one of the key attackers. So that's one of the reasons I think not as fun a card. You want your friends to be able to play the game. And I think the second reason is most people's decks get hit by Lost City. Like they can get hit by their own Lost City. Like I don't want to play Lost City in one of my decks if one of my key Pokemon is going to then be return KO'd because it's so easy to return KO in this format as well.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah.
Well, here's another card, and I was actually watching this get played against you earlier today, and it's a card that I think is 100% underplayed. We all play Rescue Stretcher, which is super awesome. You just get a Pokemon back from your discard pile to your hand, basic, stage one, or stage two. It has the added caveat of having a mode where you can just shuffle three Pokemon into your deck, so it can be useful as well in that capacity. But getting a Pokemon back to your hand is like one of the best things that you can do late game, right? That's why we just talked about Lost City being so good. Well, Buddy Buddy Rescue is interesting because it gets you a Pokemon back to your hand, but it also gets your opponent a Pokemon back to your hand, hence the name Buddy Buddy Rescue. Now, added upside, you get to use that Pokemon first because you played it. So if it's something you can set down, set up, and use, you're obviously going to be at an advantage and your opponent might not have anything in the discard pile that's really going to help them out. So Buddy Buddy Rescue can be one-sided most of the time. How are you using Buddy Buddy Rescue?
The most obvious thing that I can think of is like in Hit Bombers with Halucha, as what was done to me earlier. Yeah, like you said, that you can grab like an evolution. So like in a way, like certain decks may be like Buddy Buddy, you could try it over Revive. I wouldn't try it over your Rod, but if you have like a third recovery, like the Revive in there, that's definitely something. And you're like, hey, that looks cool. I want to try it. I would recommend it in that spot. Um, yeah, especially if your other recovery is Stretcher, the redundancy of just grabbing Evolution or something maybe is like that effect is really good.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah, I started seeing this card getting play. Andrew Mahone from Tricky Jim was playing, his Lightning Raikou list, and he had started playing the new Luxray, which is a stage two that if you're behind on prizes, you can just plop down onto your bench. So they'd been playing, some other basics or other attackers in that spot. I think like the stage one Electivire that had special energy that did more damage was maybe where he was at, but that Luxray came out. Well, Luxray can't really be recovered in the same way that other cards can. So he was like, well, just play Buddy Buddy Rescue. And then, it works out pretty well. So I think Buddy Buddy Rescue is a really, really good card. We should be playing it more.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, these are two cards that you are really into right now, and I get why after seeing you use them a lot. So they're effective reprints of each other. You've got Mallow and you've got Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking. The really the only difference between these two cards is that one of them has the future tag on it. So basically, what they do is search your deck for any two cards, put them on top of your deck after you shuffled it. So we talked about drawing up to in certain cards. We talked about using Pokestop in some of your decks. How are you getting the best out of these cards in certain situations, Lee?
Yeah, that's the thing. With decks that have a lot of, I don't want to say even like a lot of draw power, but like if you have some items, you have like an ability or two that allows you to draw into things. Um, Maybe you have acceleration items, or there's just the possibilities are endless. You could put two cards from your deck on the top of your deck. So if you have access to them, you can really it's it if you have a way to draw directly into them, it's like playing teammates or something, for your supporter when you're not knocked out or whatever. I use them to manipulate Pokestop. I like manipulating the energy when I have accelerants. Um, it's mostly those two things. Those are what I'm high on, with those two specifically. The accelerating energy and like abusing the Pokestop. You could go get like VIP, whatever, or whatever you need. You gotta be careful with the tools and stuff. Tools are not items anymore. But yeah, that's the strongest application to me. And then like if you like I said, even if you have like a normal Pokemon that lets you draw, with an ability forward, like that's a consideration too. Um, you can see any cards that you want to.
Yeah. And if you think about like some of the cards that have been printed recently, like the new Matang in metal, for example, lets you look at the top four and attach any basic metal energy that you find. Well, if you're playing Mallow and Cypher's Maniacs, that's guaranteed two attachments that turn. Plus, you might high roll up to three. I've even seen Z Man, who we had on last week, or I think the week before, actually, high rolled into four energy one time. So, like, this definitely helps you get to certain spots if you've got a trade ability like Kirlia, for example, or Liepard in Dark, you just get to instantly access those cards. It's just teammates with extra steps at times. So I think that's an effect that people want. Obviously, it needs some synergy with other things that you have going on, right? Like fighting should never play Mallow or the Cypher Maniac's Codebreaker because, like, they're just going to sit on top of your deck till the next turn, and you've used your supporter for turn to not progress anything that you're doing. So again, you got to have that draw forward ability that we've been talking about, or you have to have some sort of synergy, like even like Mallow plus like bicycle or acrobike or
Yeah,
trekking shoes. Like those are cards that synergize well too.
yeah, exactly.
Well, this is a card, you know, we should. I know that's the whole theme of today is these are underplayed cards, and I think that these are kind of two cards. I think one is probably better than the other, and I'm going to give a shout out to TV boy Noah. I think is his name, but he has been playing Repel in his fighting list, and Repel is their active Pokemon switches to the bitch, and it's an item card, which is super sweet. So it's half an escape rope. Um, which is an effect that you want sometimes more than one, especially if you're a deck that's weak to like ability lock, like Galarian Wheezing or Wobbuffet is in the active, and you just need them out of the active for one turn so you can use your abilities and get things going. Repel is a great card because it lets you do that and then use a supporter if you need to. And another card that's always like right on the fringes of like where what I want to play is Rhyme, which I think is a great card too. It's Repel, but you get to draw three cards too. It is a supporter, but I'm a sucker for the effect draw three. So I think these are two cards that we should probably be playing more often.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not really super hip to Repel. That's a pretty cool effect for just an item card. Like you said with ability lock and stuff, that's a really neat application to that. I'm sure there's even others. And Rhyme, I'm right there with you too. That's a card I play in the extreme speed. Um, to like get the heat more play to push stuff out the active, and then yeah, like heat more specifically, that's really good for to hit the 180 on the bench. If it was stuck in active or whatever, you're only do 90. So yeah, those are some pretty neat cards for sure. They could see a little bit more play.
Yeah. I always feel like I want it in Hitmon Bros, but it's always just like again, that like last card that I'm cutting before I move on to like something that I think is a little bit more consistent. But sometimes you want a Hitmonlee which snipes 90 to the bench. And sometimes you want to get rid of the active Pokemon because the active Pokemon is the threat. So if you're able to like rhyme it to the bench and then you can hit it with Hitmonlee, like that would be ideal. Obviously, in fighting, it takes a lot for that to happen, which is one of the reasons why I end up cutting Rhyme. But there are things like that that exist. Like I think Rhyme is definitely a card we should be trying more. And I'm sure people are out there trying it, and we're just maybe not seeing them include it in their final list. But Repel here is another great option to just cards that I'm going to be trying out in a ton of lists just to see kind of how they play and how they interact with what other people are trying to do. Well, Lee, that brings us to Deck of the Week. This week's deck is coming actually from one of my locals, Pandatar. It's given us his dragon list, and I know you're a dragon master, Lee, so I'm sure you're going to have a lot of input on this list. He started with a list that didn't have Dragonite in it. He came back to it, but he wanted to try some newer things in Dragon, and this was obviously before Tatsugiri and Jacloak were a thing. So you're going to see some kind of interesting cards in his list. Specifically, he's playing the Miraidon here, which basically charges up a future Pokemon. So it just charges up itself. It's got an interesting cost, which is Lightning, Lightning, Psychic. So it didn't really fit in with what a lot of other Dragon decks were doing, but it's definitely strong on its own. And then he's playing Ultra Necrozma here too as another basic. And he's playing that with Silent Lab. Ultra Necrozma can't attack unless your opponent only has 2 prize cards remaining, but you can Silent Lab away that ability, and then for only 2 energy, it's hitting 170. So super, super impressive stats on a basic, but you need something to shut off its ability for it to be a reasonable threat. Beyond that, you're seeing a lot of the traditional dragon shell. You've got Lux Cape to protect, TM Energize to get that early start. Of course, Double Dragon Energy plus Guz Mahala is one of the best combos you can have in Dragon. And then a card we just talked about, he opted to play Sonia because, again, you've got wonky energy cost in Dragon. So being able to get those basic energies for those specific mons at the right time is definitely going to be key. So an interesting Dragon list here, Lee, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. I like what's going on there. That's really aggressive with the Miraidon. That's a card that I was considering with Dragostop. I didn't have room for the energy though, I felt like, but only because I don't run any other specials. That looks pretty cool though. I wonder if he misses maybe the Miraidon acceleration with not having the second lightning. But there looks like there's a lot of ways to get around that in the other with the other, all the other energies. It definitely looks like a super cool list. Um, yeah, like you said too, the Sonya. I like the Sonya in there to pay the costs.
Hmm.
I would sleep a little bit better with that in the deck, and it's there. So yeah, so, I approve. It
Yeah.
looks like some really cool stuff going on in there.
Yeah, and besides Silent Lab here, they're also playing Hex as a way to turn off that Ultra Necrozma if they need to. And Hex is just a super useful card as well. So like you're not really missing anything by including it in your deck. It's probably a huge help when you have Fast Call Dragonite too, just being able to turn off your opponent's ability, take a KO, and then come back to your turn and search for any supporter again. So looks tight. Yeah, I haven't played against it. He got his dragon badge early, so he played dragon our first season, got the dragon badge, and then dipped off to fighting in other places. But I would love to see a recurrence of this build at our locals. He's the only one who really plays fighting, so I haven't had or dragon, so I haven't really had a chance to play against it. But we'll see, we'll see. Maybe I'll put it together and try it out myself. Well, Lee, moving back to underplayed cards in the Gym Leader Challenge format, up on my screen is a card I think is slept on a little bit. And depending on who you're talking to, you can get responses about this card from, whoa, that card is not underrated. Everyone's playing it, to like, I've never heard of this card. What does it do? So it's so weird how the Gym Leader Community Challenge is right now. I think maybe part of that has to deal with PTCGO going down. None of us really have like meta lists because we're all just cooking and brewing, separately. Maybe we'll get together at some point and talk all things GLC. Maybe that's what this podcast is for. But the card is Battle Compressor, and Battle Compressor looks real mid when you look at the card and the text. It's search your deck for up to 3 cards, discard them, shuffle your deck. So again, not obvious what some of the different applications are. But some of the, easier ones to see, and basically every deck plays this, is just imagine like you need a certain supporter for turn. You have VS Seeker in hand, but you don't have the supporter that you need to play. Well, with Battle Compressor, again, it's kind of a wonky combo here. You go and grab that supporter, discard it, VS Secret into hand, and then you get to play it immediately. The same thing here can be said with Rescue Stretcher. Hey, there's a key Pokemon that's going to kind of open up your board, or it's going to get attacking in, but you need it now or you need it to evolve. Battle Compressor, throw in the discard pile, use Rescue Stretcher, grab it back. There's just a lot of different applications with Battle Compressor. It's super flexible, which again is kind of like the key to all of these underplayed cards. Do you value a specific effect, or do you value, flexibility in what you're doing in your singleton Pokemon format? How are you using Battle Compressor, Lee?
Well, you named a lot of the the ways that I use it there with the recurrence of, hey, I need this supporter right now, or hey, I have this rescue stretcher in my hand, but and I need to, evolve a Pokemon real quick or get something else down, find that specific thing. I find myself I've used it. It really honestly depends what's in your hand. If you're sitting on Clara, even that makes you need a couple Pokemon down. You can accelerate you have a way to get energy back or something. Um, you know, there's a million ways to use Battle Compressor. That's probably one of my favorite item cards just because of the flexibility, because the value in it also is like kind of like what you have available, but then there's the thinning is winning aspect of it too. You're pitching your VIP pass, you're pitching cards you don't need to see other cards that you do need. So like it's a really good card almost all the time. Even if you don't have an immediate use out of it, you can use it. I like to save it sometimes if I have aspirations of making like a crazy play. Um, because there's lines that you can hit that are pretty wild with Battle Compressor. Um, for example, like in my cups list, if I open up Battle Compressor and greens and I have a free retreater, I'm probably gonna go Battle Compressor, a couple energy, and then go greens for like energy sticker turbo patch attached per turn, and hope to amazing shot turn one going second. Like it's uh it's a card that opens up a lot of lines. Not even you don't even necessarily have to build around the Battle Compressor. I think it's really good as a card. Like if you have Clara and like there's a couple other cards that are probably good with it too. Maybe like super energy retrieval or energy retrieval, but most of the decks that are playing that already play that. But I think Battle Compressor is a pretty good card. I don't want to say like in a specific deck, but it's just a really good card.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
Yeah,
At.
and I'll mention a couple decks. Obviously, Lee, you're talking about your Lightning deck. Any deck with a Dino Motor in it wants energy in the discard pile, right? If you've got Flaffy and Electric on your bench, but you don't have any energy in your discard pile, well, Battle Compressor gets you two, and that's two attachments for turn. The same thing with, Colossal builds and fighting. You need a fire and a fighting in your discard pile to attach them. Do this. Lightning is even getting that new Morpeko that attaches energy from the discard pile. So again, that might be something you consider using this Battle Compressor for. You mentioned recovery cards. Water always wants energy, especially when it has its rain dancers into play. So imagine you have Nessa in hand. You can Battle Compressor to go and get energy, Nessa that energy back. The same thing with Psychic. You can do the same thing with Tulip. There's the possibilities are endless with Battle Compressor. There's some really neat things you can do. But at the end of the day, the floor for Battle Compressor is you get three cards out of your deck that just don't feel like they fit in that particular match. Hey, none of my basics are prized. Hisuian Heavy Ball can get on my deck. Makes your draws a little bit better. The same thing with Battle VIP Pass. You get a little bit greedy, you decide to play that card, that's on you. But you know what? You can always get rid of it if you're playing Battle Compressor, so you're not top decking that later on in the game. So again, just such a super flexible card. And again, that feels like the key of tonight is these are underplayed cards, but they're so flexible in what they're doing that I feel like they should be played more than they are. All right, coin flipping Lee. We got recycle. Flip a coin. If heads, put any card from your discard pile on top of your deck. It's half a Silene. All right, so basically everything we said for Silene functions here. I know you're playing it in your Dragostat list. How's recycle been working out for you so far?
Yeah, recycle is one of those busted ones. Just grabbing any card back on a flip can really change the course of a game, depending on what else you're packing in your hand, what's in the discard pile. Recycling for a supporter back and then playing the supporter can get you out of a lot, depending on what you have available. It really just depends what you've used throughout the game, but you could recycle early, you could recycle late. You know, you make the one card, the singleton, two of basically. You get a second use of it, um, and I'm pretty big on doing that. Recycle has some pretty cool uses, um, like specific to to their decks. Like you could one that I'm thinking of is like in theory you could like be string twice with Guzzlord. Like that probably would never happen, but like you could do that. Or this actually came up today. This is crazy. You could electro power twice. I did not know that. If you find a way to get the electro power back, you can draw into it and play it again. So like 30 plus 30, you know, you recycle and silene, you get three times. No, but yeah. Yeah,
That's
I learned that
absurd.
today actually. Man, who was it? Pokinova actually. Shout out Pokinova. He was watching the game, and I was like, "Yo, can I do that? Like in theory?" Because I needed to do like 180 damage. I had amazing shot on mine, but I needed it again. I'm like, would that work? And apparently, it does.
Yeah, that's so this is what kind of we're talking about. Like these are like applications that like, I as a player have never thought of before. Like would I ever need to electro power twice? I don't know, but now
Yeah,
I know that I can. And it like we've mentioned before with Silene, if your deck is set up to draw into the top deck, like you're just getting these cards back instantly. Obviously, coin flip aside, there are times when these cards are just gonna be busted, right? So like recycling your Lux Cape over and over again. Again, your opponent is most likely only playing one field blower, unless you're taking my advice and playing multiple copies now. These are getting them back, and it's just like being able to recur any card is just such a powerful effect. It's such a powerful effect that they had to make it on a coin flip. So, the fact that we
yeah,
have access to Recycle and Silene is pretty cool. Um, I'm excited to see kind of this is kind of where you're at in it. So I'm kind of excited to see beyond Dragostop and beyond what you're doing with your amazing cups Turbo Raikou list, kind of what you'll be doing with these two cards in the future.
yeah. Be working closely for sure.
Well, when we were mentioning Giovanni's scheme earlier, which again was draw up to 5 as one of the modes, and then the other mode was do extra 20 damage. Someone said, well, shouldn't you just play Professor's Kukui? Yeah, probably. And that's why we have Professor Kukui on screen right now. So Professor Kukui is draw two cards, which again, drawing cards is always great. And then you do get the muscle band effect. Add 20 damage for that turn. One of the persons or people that have popularized this card and a high achieving deck is Jeffrey Vanderveken, who just won the spring championship of the Cardboard Warriors. And again, someone who I think is one of the best players alive at the moment in Gym Leader Challenge. He's playing Professor Kukui to kind of help out. Snorlax is a great attacker, but some of the other attackers in colorless can be less than stellar at times. So giving that extra damage boost while progressing and making a bigger hand is definitely something you want. Like, let's be honest, if we could play more than one muscle band in a couple of lists, we would. Well, now we can. Muscle Band and Professor Kukui. There are other options too. I should probably go ahead and mention it. Grant is the fighting version of this. Grant is pretty cool because you get to play it. And then if you want to get it back to hand, you can discard two cards. So you basically have access to 30 extra damage at any point in time with Grant, which is really, really cool. It doesn't draw you cards, it gets rid of cards. So Kukui is kind of the opposite One of them is letting you punch real hard, and this one's kind of punching hard while being a little bit more consistent. So I'm on the Kukui train. Where are you at, Lee?
Yeah, I play Kukui and Dragon, and I actually don't have Muscle Band in Dragon because I find myself looking for other tools early, and I think Kukui is a great card in general. But like decks that can go pinpoint a supporter and just like, hey, I need 20 extra damage, especially in like decks like Dragon where you're hard capped at 160 and you need to get over that threshold. I mean, it could be really good. Um, there's and drawing forward is always good. You play draw three cards with arguably lesser effect um than something like a Kukui.
Don't
So
hit on my
I'm
bird keeper.
definitely yeah, yeah. Switch. You want to switch and draw three. That's cool too. But like drawing two and doing 20 more is that's a good card almost all the time.
Yeah.
Even if you're not attacking, at least like you draw forward. Because sometimes with Bird Keeper, you might not want the pivot, or maybe you don't even have the bench Pokemon, or you know, gets kind of awkward sometimes. But Kukui, I love Kukui.
Yeah. I mean, Kukui, like, at worst, it's draw two cards, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's something to look at, which, again, if you're thinking about it, it's just one more card in your hand because you had to play the Kukui. But that one card could open up a lot of things that you're doing.
Mhm.
To think about it, we've all been there with Cynthia and Caitlin on turn one as our only draw supporter, and we've had to discard to draw three without any other effect. Well, Kukui is maybe slightly better in certain situations. Maybe helps get the donk on the early game while also kind of helping you set up. It's not the last thing you do on the turn too. So like you only have one basic, attach an energy, Professor Kukui, draw two cards, hopefully grab another basic, and you can punch in with some extra damage. Again, that might be enough to win you some games. So Kukui has a lot of applications, like we've talked about. It's a damage booster, but it's a draw support card as well.
Mhm.
This next one is a card. Again, I'm going to put it on the list. And I put this one on the list. I like it a lot, and it has a drawback to it, but I think it's underplayed for what it does in almost every deck. And the card I'm talking about is, Chorus Experiment. And it's look at five cards, three go to your hand, and then two get lost zoned. And the idea behind this card, at least when I put it on this list, is like, how many times have you sat there and you've had one of the cards you need in your hand to pull off a play, but all of your effects are like the other chorus here on the screen, which is shuffle draw. You're kind of reducing your percentages if you shuffle that card back in and then draw it. Whereas Chorus Experiment, you get a little bit of selection because you are checking out the top five of your deck. So hopefully you've done enough to thin, maybe Battle Compressor, for example. And then you look at the top five, and you just get to add those cards to what is arguably already a decent hand. So I think that's what Chorus Experiment does for decks. Is it builds bigger hands. It adds to what you already have. Are you going to have doo-doo hands and want to shuffle them away? Of course, right? Like no one's saying don't play in or Marnie or Iono or all those other cards. But I do think that Chorus Experiment is a draw support. Again, it's card selection plus additional cards that I think more decks should be playing. It also gets rid of just the same way that Battle Compressor puts things in the discard pile. It might get rid of some cards that are not useful in a matchup, and all of a sudden you're not shuffling them back into your deck to draw later. So I think Chorus Experiment is huge. It comes at a cost. Lost zoning is a big cost, but I think it might be worth it sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, drawing forward five in any capacity, the five next cards with cards already in your hand, that's a very powerful effect. Most of I'm not gonna say all the time because I mean there are decisions like you said, and two of them have to go. But if you have one piece like you said, drawing five, that's a that's pretty good if you've used other cards that should be played like the battle compressor. Maybe you recycled a card you wanted to put on top of there and see or something.
Mhm.
No, all jokes aside though, drawing forward five is a really strong effect. Regardless of what you have to do, just seeing the next five cards.
Mhm. Yep. So again, I'm going to say more decks should be playing it, not just decks with lost zone synergies. But we'll see. I still have to test it out myself, but I just keep thinking about it. Man, this is so good. Like I'm going to play it in all my fighting lists. I think going forward, except maybe Hitmon Bros, because I can only imagine like staring at a hand that's like the three bros, Silent Lab, and Halucha, and being like, like there are going to be situations sometimes that come like that. Is it worth it? Maybe the other, X amount of times, probably. So, Colorless Experiment, keep it on your list. Underplayed in other decks. All right, two tool cards here that Lee thought was definitely underplayed here. We got Wishful Baton and XP Share, which are two tools with two different effects but similar outcomes. So, Wishful Baton is if this card is attached to your active Pokemon and that Pokemon is knocked out, you can move up to 3 basic energies to one of your bench Pokemon. So, this is on the active, it gets KO'd. You can move that energy where you see fit onto the bench. XP Share is a little bit different. You have to attach it to your bench Pokemon. And then when the active is knocked out, you can move a basic energy from that Pokemon to the one on the bench where this is attached. So, again, both ways to conserve energy on tools. How are you using this, Lee?
Yeah, streamlining attackers with wishful baton. I've been on that for a long time. Well, not I don't want to say a long time, but my first idea of how to apply the wishful baton was when I seen Veluza at first. And I was like, Veluza passes 2 energy. Is there and it's a hydro pumper. Is there any way to, get any more value out of that? Especially in an archetype like fishy jump and stuff where maybe the Starmie play, is there the next turn. You force the field blower and a silent lab in play or something. But wishful baton, that was where I initially thought of it. Um I really got use of it in Dragostop where I'm streamlining those attackers with the specific energy costs. And so you can really it's really, really flexible in powering up another attacker, especially with the weird energy costs. You can kind of make the fire is the universal one there. And then the fighting, you can either go, Koraidon or Drampa with and then have the third energy be whatever to still get full value out of their attacks. Same with Druddigon if you like slap of water on there or something. Um, it's just a really sneaky good card. It forces the blower because you don't really want your energy passing. That kind of defeats the purpose. Like, yeah, they get the knockout, but they have to deal with something else immediately. You may have attached to somewhere else too, building up multiple attackers. I really like EXP share. I admittedly haven't really tried it out a lot, but in theory, that's just a card that definitely should be messed around with more. I should be playing around with that a little bit more in the specific lists that I try to abuse something like the Raikou or something, maybe with Thornton. That came up in a conversation today. But yeah, Wishful Baton, I'm really high on that card. I really like that card.
Yeah. And, with more people going for early, TM evolution plays or TM energized plays, sometimes you're putting energy on something that's not an attacker. Well, how can you conserve that energy? XP share is a great way to do it. Like imagine turbo energizing onto a Guzzlord that now has XP share attached to it, and that Pokemon gets knocked out in the active. You're 1 energy away from using Red Banquet that following turn. So it definitely has some great uses. And like you mentioned too, you're forcing your opponent to make a decision that they probably don't want to do. You've got Field Blower in hand, and you see one of these tools come down, and you realize that your opponent is going to be able to chain attackers unless you get rid of Wish Baton and XP share, and you're trying to keep ahead on that prize trade. You're going to burn that Field Blower on one of these cards, and then maybe Luxurious Cape comes down, or you're going to have to gust around that card to kind of, sort out the math a bit. So these cards force, I don't want to say bad plays from your opponent, but they force your opponent to pivot from what they had been thinking about doing to react to you. And whenever your opponent is reacting, you feel like you're in a good spot most of the time.
Agreed.
Well, Another card on our list is another conditional KO card. We talked about teammates earlier, and teammates is kind of like the quintessential card when it comes to KO conditionals. But teammates is if one of your Pokemon was knocked out, go grab two cards. Sometimes two cards isn't enough. Sometimes you're like, man, I'm one short of this thing that I want to do. Well, in walks in Rosa here, and Rosa is a KO conditional Pokemon as well. It's search your deck for three cards, but they have to be specific things. So it's Pokemon, trainer card, and a basic energy. So this card can be useful in a lot of different ways. Like, for example, you can get Guzzlord and Beast Ring off of Rosa. Plus, you can get, a basic energy as well in case you need that extra energy attachment somewhere else. It doesn't get you the DCE, but it does help out in other ways. So, that's one application for it. Still thinking on dark, you can get Galarian Weezing, not Galarian Weezing, Galarian Moltres, the Professor's Letter, and then maybe potentially even like another energy so you can power it up in one turn. So Rosa is a pretty sweet card. And Hitmonbros, oftentimes you need a card to recover one of your combo pieces. Then you need the energy potentially, and then you can get another Pokemon. Maybe Halucha shows up. So Rosa's great. Costella is chiding in chat. Rare Candy, Magnezone Energy. These are all things that you can do with Rosa that you couldn't do with teammates. Again, that one extra card sometimes matters.
Yeah.
All right, Lee. X Transceiver. And you've already alluded to this card a lot. Again, it's a coin flipper. Pokegear is the card that most people look to add a little bit of supporter search in their decks. Look at the top 7, reveal supporter, and put it in your hand. You're playing X Transceiver in a lot of your builds, and actually a lot of item-based builds, even going like to Psychic Lost Zone at one point. We're playing X Transceiver. So X Transceiver is flip coin, find a supporter. X Transceiver, what you doing with it?
Trying to find that supporter, trying to find the exact supporter actually. And that was the biggest sell to me because I got tired of playing these 13, 14 supporter decks with, you know, trainer mail, pokey gear, and just kind of whipping. Trainer mail, okay, that's a still a really good card, but if you're willing to play those two cards, especially like your first turn or two when you have, 50 cards in your deck, I think a coin flip for any card that you want, any supporter that you want, is a pretty good sell. As opposed to, pokey gear, you see 7 out of 50, and you might not even see any, let alone, you might get your Rhyhorn teammate, something that you can't immediately play. So Extransceiver is like a really good accuracy card. So you have you, it's funny that it's an accuracy card because it's a coin flip, but you go pinpoint exactly what you need for the turn. Especially going second. In the list that I've been playing with the energize and doing all this, cheesy stuff to make my board state like really, really good. Being able to pinpoint that supporter is something that you should definitely consider if you're, playing Poke Gear with less than like 14 or less supporters. I think is a good time to consider Extransceiver. Gear is good if you're at like 15, but I don't know. I just I'd rather flip the coin on any day, but I'd also just like to choose my supporter. That's one of the strongest effects probably on an item that you could probably have early or later. Like it's super good early, like I was saying, for your energized plays, or you go grab greens VIP. You could do literally whatever. I flipped Extransceiver earlier. One prize left for boss. It's just a real bailout card when it works.
Yeah. And again, the coin flip is going to turn people's off. But Lee, we got to get you to Vegas with how much you like to flip coins and roll dice. So, but X Transceiver, again, we look at some of the most busted Pokemon with abilities in the game, and like Buddy Catch Glade comes to mind. And just imagine if you put Buddy Catch Glade on an item half the time. Half the time you got to use it.
Mhm.
Well, that's probably still pretty busted too. And that's what X Transceiver is giving you. And like we know in most Gym Leader Challenge matches, it comes down to, do you have it or do you not have it? So if you have it, usually that turn's going to go well. This is another one of those cards that let you have it. And having the right card at the right time is one of the best things you can do. You just still got to pick the right card for the moment. And that's something people have to develop with
Right,
time.
for sure.
Well, we got two more things to kind of get to, and we've talked a lot about trainers because again, when you're shoehorned into a type like you are in Gym Leader Challenge, it's probably hard to be like you should play these specific Pokemon just because everyone's got their own style, everyone's got what they want to do. There's archetypes that already exist. You're looking for synergy, so you know I'm not going to tell everyone to play specific Pokemon. Check out the other episodes later. But just in general, here are, I think, two types of Pokemon that Lee and I both think are Pokemon that you guys should play. And so, number one is kind of like the base rule. Number one is never leave home without a bench barrier. I mean, they're so easy to slot into your deck. Not every deck has a bench barrier, but if your type does have it and it's not already got a busted printing, like for example, there's a Bronzong that is a like basically super bench barrier, but like you can't not play the other Bronzong. The other Bronzong's a Dynamotor. It's so good. It can evolve on turn one and it's level ball searchable. Like there's nothing you're going to do about that. But in types like Water and Psychic, you have access to Manaphy, you have access to Mew. Fighting has Machoke, which evolves into one of the best fighting Pokemon there is, Machamp. So, like, if there's one thing I'm going to say, they're a little bit underplayed just because I see people cut them so often. Z-Man, again, told me the other day, he was like, I don't play Bench Barrier in my lists. I didn't realize that people actually did that. And I was like, oh my goodness. It's like, so play your Bench Barrier. I don't know, Lee, are you with me on the Bench Barrier train, or do you think it's a spot that's wasted?
Yeah, well, if you're planning on playing me the next 2 weeks, you should probably play Bench Barrier. I'm still gonna be grinding the, out Nacing, playing Spread and trying to cheese Raikou amazing shots, so, if you're playing me, I would definitely play Bench Barrier. You should play it regardless, though. Follow Bation's, advice. It's great advice, regardless. Yeah, I know it is a card that's, like, easy to cut, like, yeah, I don't need it this matchup, but, better safe than sorry, you can find one spot. If it's kind of negligent if you don't, because some types wish that they had it, like you just mentioned, like Metal wishes that they could probably, protect their bench. But they can't because they have a better printing on a card, um, on the same Pokemon that would do that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think if you can, then do it. I think there's even a stadium that prevents it. If I could be wrong, it's like some
Sky Pillar.
XY stadium, Sky Pillar. Yeah. Yeah. I would look for room for bench barrier for sure.
Yeah. Again, especially if you know your locals well, and we should probably add in this little disclaimer. Hey, you know your locals well. Spread isn't very big at your locals. Like maybe you can get around it. There's, skilled players can play around it too, just like the way that you go to benching certain things. Sometimes you can't get around benching just because the way the name needs to go. Like you do need to be proactive in this format. So not benching can be tough, which is one of the reasons why I think Hitmons is so good, is because it does force opponents to be a little bit more reactive at times. But play bench bear if you can. If you're the spread guy at your shop, maybe you can afford to cut it because no one else is going to be playing it. But again, I think it's too easy. Like in the Mew, like if you're a psychic player, the Mew is just pretty good on its own. Like Dimension Valley, the attack is free, and it's 3 damage counters anywhere. And a lot of psychic lists are already playing like cleanup strategies. Maybe you miss the KO, while the Mew can like just pop up there and take kind of a cheeky KO if it needs to. So the Mew is amazing. Manaphy is a little worse, but you do get the extra HP, which I think is really good for Manaphy as well.
Yeah.
All right. Last underplayed cards. And these are the ancient trait Pokemon. And They're underplayed. Obviously, I think we all probably have played or play at some point, and it does bear mentioning because every time I put a YouTube video up of me playing a ancient trait Pokemon, I get the same question: "Aren't those banned? Aren't those banned?" No, they're not banned. They're not banned. They actually were initially banned from the format, and then they got reintroduced once people realized that the power level was fine. So they're legal. You can play them, and they have some pretty sweet applications and some pretty sweet. It's not abilities too because they don't get turned off. We'll just call them ancient traits here. So the ones I have on screen kind of follow like the traditional trends. Like there's a couple different alta traits that just get repeated. So there's the Delta Plus, which is an extra prize. There's Barrage, which is attack twice. Barrier, which protects something from the effects of trainers that your opponent plays. And then there's like the stop, which this Celebi on the screen has, where it can't be affected by Pokemon's abilities or the effects of an opponent's abilities done to that Pokemon. So there's a ton of different things. What's your go-to Ancient Traylee?
I've really been liking Articuno lately. I flipped 3 coins, 3 heads today. Um, for 140. That was really sweet. I'm looking at that Electrike on the screen right now. I'm going to apply that in my deck. They have some really cool things that they can do, especially with the last few sets. I think they're a little bit underexplored, especially like the TMs, like Torchic, for example, with Evo TM, is pretty busted. You could go the Turbo Energize attacking twice. That's super busted. Taking the prizes with blindside and stuff. It almost just made entirely new like ways to play them, like just new archetypes in themselves. And then it made already existing strategies much better. Um, with the stuff that's been recently released, I think, and I think some revisiting might have to. You might have to go check out a couple of your old lists and stuff and see what you can cook. The
Yeah.
card pool looks expanded. It's I see a lot of them being better.
Mhm. And they're pretty well balanced. Like when you look at the cards
Mhm.
on the surface when they were printed, you're like, okay, cool. There's this Swellow that takes 2 extra prizes. 3 energy for 50 is a terrible attack rate. Well, you look at Jeffrey's most recent Porygon Z list that he won the spring championship with, and this is the second time we're talking about it. It's impressive. But you don't play the Swellow to do 50 damage. You play it with Crisis Punch, or you play it with Blindside in your spread list. You mentioned the Articuno. There's so many spreaders in water that can do decent jobs of setting up an Articuno blindside play. Then you don't have to rely on those coin flips. Even Torchic. You mentioned great setup potential. It's a basic that can attack twice. Well, now it's a basic that with, Charizard and maybe like a Raihan energy from hand, all of a sudden you go and get a TM off of the Raihan and you're, crisis punching twice and you're down from 2 prizes to winning the game because nothing is going to be able to survive 280, So like this is just
Yeah.
endless. And the Electrike that you mentioned, it's got the barrier which protects it from your opponent's trainers. Well, you just attach energy to it and then you Thornton it into your Raikou. And all of a sudden, like you've just been protecting this, you've been setting up this play, and now it's going to get you the win because you can take 2 prizes with this Raikou because the Electrike protected itself. So there's a lot of, like you mentioned, the card pool has grown and like TMs are
Mhm.
huge. I feel like they've changed so much about what we've done and they're underexplored a little bit. It's time. It's time for us to break out the ancient traits. I think if your type is one that has an ancient trait that's pretty good, put it in your list and see what it can do.
Agreed for sure, 100%.
Yeah. Well, Lee, that brings us to the end of our underplayed cards. Is there any card like from the list that we were just talking about that you're just like, man, I'm gonna go home and just shove that in my list, or I've already got it in a list and I think it's even better than I thought at the original at the start?
Well, that Electrike for sure. That was ordered yesterday, so that'll be replacing the Thundy Boy, I think. The Torchic I kinda wanna revisit a little bit. Shout out to Spence. I got my last async league against him, I got, blindsided twice, to get the game closed out on me with the Torchic, with the Chicken McFly, list. That was, pretty crazy. Yeah, Crisis Punch, Evo TM, he had all 3 of those in there abusing it. I think with the recent card pool and stuff that, has been expanded upon, it has a lot more potential
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, you
Yeah,
mentioned
those are
Spence. I was playing in my async game against him the other day too, and that Torchic just kind of sat on the battlefield for a while, and I knew that he had some TM plays because when you see the Torchic, you know that there's something
yeah,
up. You know
something
he's
about it.
cooking with something. So I had to just keep waiting. Like I was waiting to KO it with I had Lost City in my deck, so I was just like, we need to make sure we get to a point. We need to avoid getting to 2 prizes, so he can't use Crisis Punch in case he's got it. So, that definitely makes you play a different way. And if you're not playing a certain way against it, you just go into a matchup blindly. All of a sudden,
Yeah,
Torchic,
if you
Swellow.
read the cards on the surface, like you said, like, you might not know what they got up their sleeve, honestly,
Mm,
you don't know if it's blindside, you can make an informed guess, but you never really know what's going on.
yeah. And then probably the best one, I didn't put it on screen and thinking back on, I don't know why I didn't, is there's the Bunnelby. The Bunnelby with the
Oh, yeah.
Barrage ancient trait, which attacks twice. And both of its attacks are kind of used in all
Yeah.
decks. The first attack is discard a card from the top of your opponent's deck. So if you're in a control strategy and you're trying to mill your opponent, that's great. Well, the second attack is get a card back from your discard pile and put it into your deck. So like it's a recovery card. It's any recovery card. So those are 2 uses. It's great. Both of those cost 1 energy. And then on top of that, you have that added luxury of a TM play. So ancient traits, man, the Bunnelby. Should have put it up here. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Yeah, I think the card I'm most excited to cook with, and I've been playing it for a long time, but I want to kind of see what it can do in more list is Battle Compressor. Like I know we talked about it, but it's like every time I look at that card, I'm just like, man, it's got so many applications. Why aren't I playing it in this? Why aren't I playing it in that? And to be honest, I should probably just go through and just shove it in every deck and see how it plays and be like, okay, it fits really well here. It's a little mid here because I think a lot more decks want it than they should.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I slapped it in Fishy Jump, I haven't, looked back.
It's pretty good in Fishy Jump. And thinking back, we're even getting another like Nessa like card in,
Yeah, 3, right?
and Lana's, I can't remember, Lana's something. So
Yeah,
even more applications with the recovery that has available to them. I mean, setting up even like talking about Battle Compressor and Fishy's Jump specifically. You have the Basculin that evolves into the Basculegion that does more damage for energy that's in your discard pile, and then
yeah,
shuffles it back. That's just like you just put 3 energy in. All of a sudden, that's doing 60 more damage. Whoosh, and then all that energy gets back into your
mhm,
deck. So that is awesome.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, to wrap things up, we got one shout out here, Lee. Cardboard Warriors Summer Championship. I know we talked about the Spring Championship twice, but Summer Championship coming up. So it is a webcam tournament for all of you out there. If you want to test yourself against some of the most dedicated players in the world, those dedicated enough to do a whole webcam setup and dedicate a Saturday to this event, hop in to this July 13th at 12 Central Time. It's going to be in the Cardboard Warriors Discord. And just like the last one, it's a $100 prize pool to the winner, sponsored by Heavy Play. So shout out to them there. You going to play?
Hopefully, yeah, Saturday, my boy don't got school, we'll make it work.
Nice, nice. I say that now, but let me double check here for everyone at home whether it is actually a Saturday or a Sunday. Either way, I won't be able to play it. Weekends are tough for me, but
Yeah.
definitely something I'm looking at. July. Yep, Saturday it looks like. So Saturday that is. Check it out. Play in it. It's gonna be a fun time. I think I made predictions last time. Am I stupid enough to make another prediction, Lee? I think that more people are going to try to play Lost City in this tournament. I think that's one prediction that I'm going to make right now. 2 colorless lists were in the top 4 of the last event. Psychic Lost Zone was in the top 4. Both decks that are pretty weak to Lost City. So I'm going to call it right now. I think a Lost City deck emerges. I don't know if it's going to top 4 or not, but I think we'll see it more.
Yeah, I smell enhanced hammer and other things of that nature on the menu. But yeah, Lost City is a very good. That's a good suspect right there.
Yep. Well, Lee, thank you for joining us again. It has been a pleasure to have you on to talk unplayed cards and Gym Leader Challenge.
It was always a pleasure. My pleasure is mine.
All right. Well, hey, everyone, have a wonderful night. And thank you again for listening to Let Loose, the podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge in the Pokemon TCG. We'll see you guys next week where we talk about staples in the Gym Leader Challenge format.